For many celebrity artists, performing at the Super Bowl halftime show is a career-defining opportunity. With over 100 million viewers worldwide, the Super Bowl is one of the most watched television sporting events on the planet. And with such massive viewership, artists are under immense pressure to deliver an unforgettable yet professional show. After all, their artistic integrity isn't the only thing on the line when the NFL is footing production costs. It only makes sense the industry would have some pretty strict rules in place to make sure everything goes according to plan. However, it's still a live show, and accidents or controversies have always happened, despite the performers' best intentions. Keeping it PG. Despite their best intentions, halftime show performers have still found themselves in the middle of international controversies, and while it may be said that all press is good press, there are still rules and guidelines in place to ensure the show goes well. It should go without saying that if you're performing for over 100 million people, you're going to want to put on a show that's family-friendly. And while NFL wants to hire acts that will entertain and dazzle audiences, sometimes provocation can go a little too far. In 2012, musical artist MIA endured harsh criticism as images of her circulated flipping off the camera during her halftime show performance. Now, even though this is a little more PG than the Janet Jackson-Justin Timberlake halftime scandal, many viewers were still offended, and the NFL actually sued MIA for $1.5 million for a breach of contract and damage to the NFL's goodwill and reputation. However, MIA says it was all a misunderstanding, as she was just showing a hand gesture related to a yoga practice and Hindu goddess Matangi, who was one of the main subjects of MIA's latest film. Regarding the legal accusations, the NFL and MIA settled the lawsuit at an undisclosed amount. Keep it simple. The most simplistic performances often work the best for Super Bowl halftime shows. In 2011, the Black Eyed Peas tried to censor the expletives in their songs during their live sets, which kind of made for an awkward live show. However, often the most simplistic performances work best for the Super Bowl halftime show. If you're performing for so many people, it's important to make sure you keep it family-friendly. And if you have to go to such extreme lengths to alter your content so it's age-appropriate, maybe you should pick a different song. However, that doesn't mean the halftime show is by any means for kids. In 2002, U2 did a stunning rendition of Where the Streets Have No Name, while they projected a 9/11 memorial on a screen behind them. This was a very emotional performance relevant to the difficult times Americans were facing in 2002. Production-wise, the show was relatively simple, but the message was powerful, showing that if you're intentional with your performance, a little can go a long way. Make sure the guest artists make sense. Having bizarre combinations of guest artists performing together can sometimes be detrimental or hindering to performers' careers. Their acts can be hard for people to comprehend, and it can take them out of their genre in a way that obscures them to the public. For example, in 2016, Coldplay invited Beyoncé to perform during their set, but let's be honest, Beyoncé definitely stole the show. Another bizarre combination was the Red Hot Chili Peppers and Bruno Mars halftime show in 2014. Of course, you want to play on the element of surprise with guest appearances on halftime shows, but there's a fine line between complimentary acts and total randomness. Don't overload the lineup. Sometimes too much of a good thing is just that, too much of a good thing. In 2001, the Super Bowl halftime show was packed to the brim with celebrity overload, featuring Aerosmith, Britney Spears, Nelly, Mary J. Blige, and NSYNC. This made for a chaotic production with too many acts wanting the spotlight. And when the average runtime for a halftime performance is around 20 minutes, that's a lot of star power for the length of time it takes to watch an episode of The Simpsons without advertisements. Another notable traffic jam was in 2012, featuring Madonna, LMFAO, Nicki Minaj, MIA, and CeeLo Green. Though all the musical acts have credible talent and put on a pretty great show, they have a very limited amount of time in the spotlight. With such high production costs for each performance, the razzle-dazzle can be a little overwhelming to audiences and viewers worldwide. Perform for free. Oftentimes, performers do the Super Bowl for free. The Super Bowl halftime show is basically a one-of-a-kind, ultra-prestigious, unpaid internship, The Atlantic stated in an article on halftime show performances. When Lady Gaga agreed to perform in 2016, both the NFL and Pepsi, one of her official sponsors, made statements saying Lady Gaga was not paying the league and the league was not paying her. Why do so many high-profile artists like Lady Gaga agree to perform the halftime show for free? For one thing, the NFL fronts the cost of production for the performance. And when you're Lady Gaga, that means you have multiple costume changes, hordes of background dancers, extravagant lighting cues, and elaborate sets. And those are going to cost a little more than a single guitar in a spotlight. In fact, hers cost about $10 million. But the exposure you get as a performer is priceless, and many high-profile performers take on the Super Bowl seemingly as a love for the game. It is an artistic honor few are lucky to achieve, and with over 110 million people watching your performance, it may just be worth it for some artists who want to take their fame to the next level. Katy Perry had a similar arrangement with the league as Lady Gaga. She didn't pay for airtime, and they only covered the production costs, which, if you recall, were pretty incredible. Her iconic fire sequin dress and puppet she rode in on definitely cost quite a bit of money. The show also featured Missy Elliott and Lenny Kravitz, and was one of the wildest halftime shows to date. Lipsynching? Many performers have lip-synced on their performances, and while that may seem like a shock to some people, it's actually encouraged by the NFL. The setup for a halftime show is extremely rushed, and pre-recorded tracks provide that much more time saved in the getting ready process for the live show. Weather complications can also be detrimental to live outdoor shows, so many artists will pre-record their set just in case something goes awry with the technical side of things. Whitney Houston actually sang a pre-recorded rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner at the 1991 Super Bowl, and it is largely considered one of the greatest national anthem renditions to date. If a singer does perform live, they can wear in-ear monitors to sing along to pre-recorded tracks or to hear themselves singing live, so their voices don't get drowned out by the crowds cheering them on. However, some halftime show artists have taken offense at the opportunity of pre-recording their set, like Red Hot Chili Peppers bassist Flea and the Rolling Stones. However, it's seemingly becoming an industry standard, with pop stars like Shania Twain and Madonna, though Madonna sang some of her set live as well. The show has to be able to be set up in just 6 minutes. Super Bowl sound engineer Patrick Baltzel was nice enough to give an in-depth rundown with The Verge about what it takes to set up a halftime show. Baltzel has been the sound designer for 19 consecutive Super Bowl performances, making him a veteran in the industry. To set up a halftime show, you only have 6 minutes. From the end of the first half of the football game to the beginning of the halftime show is between 6 and 7 minutes, and that's how much time you get to build the entire show on the field. The engineers begin planning the halftime show in June, about 7 months out from the Super Bowl airtime. And while 7 months may seem like a reasonable amount of time, production has to be both immensely entertaining and airtight, leaving Baltzel and his team little room for error. When the Rolling Stones insisted they do their entire show live, a real challenge was presented to the team. They had to connect guitars, vocal mics, drum mics, ensure everything was synced up correctly, and set up the physical elements of the show, all within the 6-minute time frame. However, Madonna's show just included some live vocals. Everything else was pre-recorded, which, for a sound engineer, is a little easier to configure. The halftime acts are hired in September, and from there the team only has a few months to assemble the set. The performers need to figure out how to condense all of their chart-topping hits into about 14 minutes for the actual runtime of the performance. Pray for a miracle. While all of these rules and guidelines can be pretty tough to adhere to, at the end of the day, Mother Nature always has the final word. In 2007, Prince performed a spectacular halftime show during a tropical storm. Though production designer Bruce Rogers had been assured, "In 40 years it's never rained at a Super Bowl," he reported that in the sound booth it was so rainy and windy they couldn't see. Prince was using 4 separate electric guitars for his performance, with background dancers wearing 8-inch heels on a slick vinyl stage. With all the ingredients for a dangerous accident, Prince used the weather to his advantage. His rendition of Purple Rain during a tropical downpour was the icing on top of the cake. Prince embraced the spontaneity of the circumstances, and it really paid off. In this case, his performance was legendary and really taken to the next level by utilizing props not even the NFL's production budget could provide for. A rule for the viewers. It's not just celebrity performers who have to follow rules and guidelines for their halftime performances. If you're a viewer, you have some rules to follow of your own. If you're an owner of a small business or even run events at a church, you can of course invite patrons in to have a viewing party, but you cannot under any circumstances charge an entry fee for the viewing, and you also can't display the show on a screen larger than 55 inches. You'll need to follow all local licensing laws if you're planning on serving alcohol, which should go without saying if you're operating a bar. In 2007, the NFL actually threatened to sue a church hosting a viewing party that violated some of these party hosting rules. The violations in question involved charging admission for the viewing party, showing the game on a screen larger than 55 inches, and including the word Super Bowl in the title of their event. However, after receiving some public backlash about the impending lawsuit, the NFL has since eased up on regulations for church viewing parties, saying that while it's still forbidden to charge admission fees, a donation tray can be passed around during the viewing to offset the costs of the event. Avoiding the FCC. If you have a complaint about a television show, you're going to want to take it up with the Federal Communications Commission, otherwise known as the FCC. The FCC is an independent government agency that is in charge of regulating media communications involving radio, telephone, and television industries. Because of its exceptional viewership, the Super Bowl naturally gets a lot of complaints from the FCC, simply based on the fact that the more viewers there are, the more likely it is for some of those viewers to complain. A particularly big controversy was during the 2019 halftime show, when people were up in arms over Maroon 5's frontman Adam Levine taking off his shirt, audaciously rearing not 1 but 2 human nipples on national TV. The FCC received a whopping 55 separate complaints about the incident. Jennifer Lopez and Shakira are performing the 2020 halftime show, and Demi Lovato is set to sing the national anthem. Will they follow the rules and guidelines set up by the NFL and FCC? Will they lip sync or will they sing live? Hopefully, Demi Lovato has memorized the lyrics to the national anthem, unlike Christina Aguilera. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to The Taco for more.